start? Probably start with the number one thing you need to do in November. So this month, you need to transition. So if you've got gardeners, they're going to want to power down your irrigation. I have actually adjusted my irrigation, so let's just cover that. What should you be doing right now? Through the growing season, you are watering pre-dawn. You want to be real early in the morning so that the plants are fully hydrated as they go into the heat of the day. That reverses in the month of November. Now you're watering during the heat of the day, not early morning, so your system isn't creating icicle gardens as they run and it's freezing as we go into winter. I do keep my irrigation on 12 months out of the year. I never power mine down. I'll share a secret on how I do that with the irrigation valves. Basically, right now, let's finish up. I've got my system coming on between 10 and 2, which is the heat of the day. Almost every day of the year, we are above freezing that time frame. I mean, even in January, it might be 45. It might be going down to 19 degrees at night, but during the day, it's warm. Your plants are going to use water every day of the year. We do not freeze like the Midwest, where everything just kind of gets down to minus 40 and 8-foot frost line, and things just kind of freeze into place and hibernate. We don't do that. The plants continue to use water. Not a lot, they continue to use water. So if you just turn that system off, you don't water through the winter. Last year, our last rain was in November, and we didn't get another rain till like June. It was crazy warm and crazy dry. And so we saw a lot of death in the landscape from mature things they dried out midwinter. It got cold enough to do some damage, and then it killed off the plant. So you don't want that in your own yard. The secret to that is water twice a month. In the middle of the day, sometime every month, twice a month, water. And give it a deep soak, like you would do in the month of June. So you're giving it the regular water pattern like you always do. It's just you're changing the frequency. You're going every 14 days instead of every 3-4 days. So you're just trying to hydrate. If we get a heavy snow or a heavy rain, you can cut one of those out. Okay? And heavy, I mean we are buried alive. Like the storm is so thick that all your friends don't even go to church. I mean, they go to the grocery store and raid all of the shelves of all the food because they're hunkering down. If it's one of those events, you can cut back one of those irrigation. It takes 7 inches of snow to equal 1 inch of rain. That's pretty rough, but it's pretty close. So you see how much 7 inches of snow, that shuts this town down. I mean, we're done for 2 days. We're not going anywhere. And so if it's that much snow, you're okay. If it's just a skiff of snow or it's just pretty and then it melts by the afternoon, that's not enough. Because that's like no moisture, it doesn't get into the plants at all. So you need that 1 inch of rain or 7 inches of snow will penetrate approximately 6 inches of soil. And I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers at you, but pretty much 1 inch of rain equals 6 inches of soil penetration. So you need to have how much to penetrate a tree that's maybe 2 feet deep? You need 3-4 inches of rain to really push that water down and to hydrate that plant. And so just think in those terms. Water middle of the day, water twice a month, and you're golden. Do that from now through March. April, you're back into the full-on growing season. Everything is in bloom in March. The crab apples are blooming. The purple leaf plums have already bloomed out, already leafing at that point. The willows have been fully leafed. I mean, you're into full growing season by April 1. Kind of the end of March, you're starting to feel spring is here. Actually, you're starting to see camellias, quince, your bulbs are starting to bloom by the end of February, first part of March. So that's the sequence that we're into here, okay? That's watering. Should we cover how to keep things from freezing? The most expensive part of your entire landscape system is the manifold. That's where all the valves come off. That in the ground, usually there's a box about this big, and there's a lid. When you look in there, there's what's called a manifold. It's the technical plumbing term. But if that freezes, it's like a $500 bill to get it replaced. It's expensive. So you don't want that to freeze at any cost. If a drip emitter head comes off, 99 cents, costs nothing. You do it yourself in your sleep. If a I have problems with my elbows. So if I have a freezing problem in my drip systems, it's usually water has settled at the bottom of the hill at an elbow where I've got a 90 degree. It settles there, it freezes, expands, and cracks that. Again, $1.99, I can fix that, no worries. It's not a big deal. But if the manifold freezes, ooh, you got problems. You're gonna have to redo the entire thing. What do I do myself? I take a trash bag and I throw some insulation, your house insulation, into a trash bag and I throw it on top of the valves. And I shut the lid. Added insurance, and I've never had a valve freeze, and I've been through many sub-zero winters here. We can actually go sub-zero. It can get really cold. About every 10 years, we go sub-zero for about a week straight. And then it warms back up, so it's nice again. But it's really cold when that happens. I mean, I just remember the last time that happened. I got in the car, and sat out all night, turned the blinkers on. It's like everything's in slow motion. Whoop, whoop. I mean, your plants are in slow motion. The irrigation is just like at its limits. What I also do just to make sure, and I've already done this to my own gardens, my own valves, I take the stuff I'm going to use, the soils I'm going to use next spring, I buy them now. Enough for each valve box. So I know I use a lot of potting soil in my gardens. I have a lot of raised beds, I have a lot of containers. I use a lot of shredded bark, shredded cedar bark. I like the top dressing. I like how it looks on top of plants, around my tomatoes. It keeps the bugs away. There's a lot of benefits with that. I'll buy those now and I throw them on top of my valve box. And I'll lay them usually with the label down. I would rather have you have the Waters logo up so you can see it every time you drive in the driveway, but generally in my own gardens, I put them label down. They're kind of brown, they kind of disappear. You don't really see them. It'll drive you a little crazy, but it just ensures what it does, it gives you that much. It's like a huge pillow on top of that box. And now when the ground freezes, it's got to freeze through that soil plus the insulation and into your valves. So if you get a frost line that's a foot or more deep, that's pretty serious. You're getting close to breaking up your irrigation. So if those two tricks really play out. Some of you have a backflow preventer. It's this huge piece of brass plumbing, comes up out of the ground, and usually they try to protect it with a bag or something ugly. Sometimes they put a fake rock over it. So that's another piece that the part itself is like $200. Then it's going to take a plumber with a trip charge and an hour's worth of time to change it out. You can probably do it yourself, but minimum $200. If you have a plumber doing it, it's $400 or $500 if that thing freezes. Usually they will disconnect that. They've got some drain plugs, cock valves, and pull it off and drain it, so there's no water left in that. So that's another piece. Some of you have that, some of you don't. Depends on the neighborhoods and where you're at, what year your house was built. But watch that piece as well. Don't let that freeze. The bag will keep you insulated through the end of the year, but sometime in January, it's going to get pretty cold. Our coldest month is January. First part of February. It's usually sometime in there where you get these really cold events. By Valentine, middle of February, it's starting to get nice again. You start to get this urge of going, I've just sipped too much tea and I've baked too many cookies and I'm tired of being indoors. I just want to be out. You're getting this gardener urge to be in the garden. That's the end of February though. By March 1, it's nice. We're hiking out, we're outdoors again. Okay? So that's kind of the sequence. Those are the things to look at. If you've got a well house, so I've had a lot of well houses. This is when you're not on city water, you've got your own water source. This is the Chino Valley, Pauldens, Skull Valleys, the outer areas, the counties. There you do want to insulate that house. Make sure that thing is insulated. You've got your heat tape. You've got actual tape it's thermostatically controlled. So I've got heat tape on mine, on the main pump, the pressure tank, and all that area, all that hardware that's in there. What just happened? That just back hiccup? Anyway, I'm doing that. And then also in addition, I've got a heat lamp in the room, in the shed, in the, just this, make a plug that's also thermostatically controlled. As it gets to about 35 degrees, automatically activates. I've got the heat lamp connected to that. So I've got a heat source, it goes right onto my pump. And then I've got heat tape around my, overkill, because I've lost some pumps. And the pumps, that's $1,000 event. I mean, the pump costs $500-600. Then you got to replace it and change it out. It's $1,000, easy. So I don't want to do that again. And so I just overkill on the heat tape and stuff. So that's some things to watch. And you want to do that this month. You're fine to the end of the month. By mid-December, first of the year, you need to have that stuff locked down. Okay? So yes.
Is your pump house where your pressure tank is?
Yes.
Okay, because mine's under the house. So it
Yeah, that's good. You're under the house is fine.
Okay.
Perfectly
otherwise
fine.
I just have a cap out in an acre away.
Right.
Where the well is. Do I need to insulate that?
Anything that's exposed that can freeze, if the water, if a pipe comes up, sometimes they'll use galvanized pipe and stuff in there. If there's no pipe, you should be okay. So you're pumped, you've got your well, your well pump is down there. There's usually two pumps. Your well pump that pumps it up, which is low pressure, coming up. It fills a tank typically. Your tank, and then there's a big pump, like a 1 horse, 2 horsepower pump, that freezes. That's a really expensive pump. So watch.
I don't need to put a house over there.
Nah, where your well is, don't worry about it. It's all the exposed pipe work. So, okay, yeah. All right, good question. So, we okay on irrigation? Yeah?
I have a question. You talked about the ones that have the pipes that come up that has the pillow.
Backflow preventer, yeah.
Okay. So if you disassemble that, won't you have water all squirting all over the place if you keep your irrigation?
Good question. So, if you got a backflow preventer, your system is shut down, how do you power it back up if you need a water twice a month? Did I just do the question right? So there you might have to do it by hand. Come off a hose, go all old school and just do it by hand. Or if you get pretty familiar with that backflow preventer, you could power it up yourself, water things through the day, and then drain it again. If you've got to have a gardener to help you do that, not realistic. So maybe you could have him do it for you, or her. Gardeners are either way. But just make sure you're watering things, especially newer things. If it's under 2 years old, it's still immature. It takes 2 growing seasons to get the roots out from, let's say this is even a native. This is a native Elaeagnus, goes wild here. It's got the sweetest fragrance flower in the spring, usually about April. It fills the entire landscape up with this, even sweeter than a lilac. It's amazing. Evergreen, tough, nothing eats it. This is a tough plant. Once established, leave it alone. I mean, cuss at it, kick dirt at it. I mean, you can't kill it. So this plant's great, but when the root ball's only this big, you can kill it because it's not fully mature yet. It takes 2 seasons for the roots to get out this far to where now it's hardy enough to go by itself. So even your native things, you need to water a couple times a month through the winter until it's established and going on by itself. Usually this plant I'll water, I'll really care for it, pamper it for the first year. I'll have drip irrigation on it. And then the second season, after my second spring, I'll bend that irrigation emitter back and I'll tape it off. Thinking that if it needs me again, I'm here for you, because I'm a gardener. I've got this big heart. I care for plants. If it needs me, I could activate the drip system back again. I've never once done that yet, so I don't know why I don't just cut it off and cap it, but I just tape it just in case, or wire, whatever, and bring it off. This will go by itself after a couple of years. Okay? So water by hand if you need to. Okay, that's irrigation. Yeah. You're awfully needy in the front row. What is that?
So, with that backflow apparatus next
Yep.
to my manifold, it's not good enough just to keep that covered up once again?
So the backflow, if we keep it activated, will the bag actually insulate it and keep it from freezing? Yes, until the month of January. And then if we have a really cold winter, I've seen those break. It's an extreme event when that happens. We're talking worst case scenario here. How do you get through? Now you can monitor that some, but if you travel a lot, if you're going to take that Panama cruise in January, I would say probably be really careful with that. I have helped a buddy of mine. We just did heat tape over the backflow preventer and put the bag over it. Did an amazing job through a cold winter. So you gotta think through what happens if that frost permeates through that bag into the hardware, and then that water freezes, and as it expands, it just breaks up, just shatters the entire inside of those diaphragms inside. So just don't let it freeze. That's the main thing. Okay? All right. Next one. Fertilize, 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 and pruning. We need to do those two things. If you've not fertilized yet, do it. The most important fertilizing of the year is now. I mean, the fall is the most important fertilizing. Usually we use Halloween as the marker for that. So we're fertilizing at least 3 times a year here. If you think in terms of holiday, we're going Easter for spring. 4th of July or Independence Day. We do it then because that's usually the start of the monsoon season. You fertilize right then. You can really double down on the tree growth, the flower growth, get a whole nother season worth of color and fragrance by fertilizing right at the monsoons. And then the most important feeding, I think, is Halloween. So Easter, 4th of July, Halloween. The reason being, again, we're trying to harden our plants off. So if we have a really harsh winter, and you just never know, last year I think was one of the harshest winters we've had because it was so warm. I've never seen it so warm and so dry, ever. So much colder is much easier on plants here. Our plants go down to minus 30, 40 degrees. It's not the cold that gets them. It's the dryness in the cold that gets them. So we were just bone dry last year, and then it was just warmer than normal. So plants were more active than normal. Then they didn't have the moisture, and so it caused this death. Now, I own a garden center. It's good for me. I had a record year, so because all these plants died. But I'd rather, for my friends, I'd rather have you all be successful and be the glorious garden. I want you on the garden tour, so you inspire all the other neighbors to want to do the same thing you're doing. That's what I want for students here. So water twice a month, that'll take the edge off. Food is going to be the next one. Plants do use the food right now. They're actually elongating roots right now. Through the end of the year, they actually push a lot more roots. They're taking all that starch and they're storing it, much like fat or like a bear or a squirrel hibernating. They're taking all that food and they're creating roots. They're going to use that food to form next spring's flower buds and leaf buds. So all that new bud growth. In fact, you're starting to see lilacs already have huge buds on them. My rhododendrons have ginormous buds. So they're using that food now to finish that off and to bloom. The big mistake I find a lot of folks make here, I hear this often. I bought my lilac, it bloomed nice for 2 years and it hasn't bloomed since. I hear that story almost weekly. Not just with lilac, with roses, a lot of different things. The reason being, there is no food in your soil. There's nothing redeeming in your dirt, not one thing, except more caliche, more clay. All the good stuff was scraped off your yard and pushed to the side to build your footers and your driveways and that kind of stuff. So some of you are you're dealing with dead soil. There's nothing in there. There's no organics, nothing's left. So what you'll find is you have to fertilize more often than you would in other parts of the country. I mean, the Midwest, all you do is take one box of Miracle-Gro a year and that makes everything grow. You didn't even need that. It would have done it by itself because there's so much loam, there's so much topsoil there. You can keep going. Here, there's no food. So you need to be more regular with things. While I mentioned Miracle-Gro, let me just step on my soapbox for just a moment. Stay away from that garbage. It does not help you. It only hinders you. With our alkaline water, a salt-based fertilizer, which is what Miracle-Gro is, just does more damage than good. I know it's cheap. You can get $15 for 8 pounds at Costco for whatever. Don't subject your gardens to that. In fact, I've stopped selling that stuff in my garden center. I had too many customers damaging their plants. You get to figuring out what's going on, what's going on with the issues with this plant. You go, oh, it always came back to this fertilizer. So, okay, that's it. We made our own fertilizer. We make our own water soluble. But really what you really want to use, you want to use all-purpose plant food. So the food we fertilize, we created a decade and a half ago, a long time ago. It's organic. It's slow release. So as the snows kind of release it, as the rains come, it releases it so the plant can pick it up over a very long period of time. If you don't have much fertilizer or nutrients in your soil anyway, this is a key. Getting a real slow release natural fertilizer into the landscape. It's pelletized, it's easy. You throw it, I walk around with my hand spreader, I just throw it around the yard. I do not work it in. This is hard for you gardeners. I just chuck and go. Don't worry about getting it in the ground. It will dissolve. It will break down. If you're a gardener and you just have to do the work, I give you permission to work extra hard to do this. I generally do it and in an evening, in 15 minutes, I chuck it around, I'm done. And I do it regularly. So that's the secret. If I have a challenge with plants blooming, here's another kind of insider tip what I do. I get some superphosphate. The all-purpose plant food is kind of like steak and potatoes. You think, oh, I want a hearty meal. I'm going down to Sizzler, loading up on the buffet and downing some steak. That's what all-purpose plant food is. This is kind of like a Snickers bar. This is just a quick fix. Oh my gosh, I just want a sugar rush. Anything that blooms. So my Russian sage, I don't want just blue. I want like, whoa, I want this thing to pulsate at night, blue colors. I mean, I just want to be better than anyone else's on my street. This is how I do it. Autumn sage, or the Salvia gregii, one of the red flowers that hummingbirds love. I fertilize that with this, and it just nonstop, April through, it's still got bloom. Lilacs, a must. Roses, especially carpet roses. My carpet roses are in full bloom as I give it this. And I'll give it not once a month, just every once in a while. As they stop blooming, I'll kind of chuck a few handfuls on. What the garden books say is you have to work this stuff in. What I find is I just chuck and go, and it makes a difference. I don't really do a lot of work with it. This is 0, 18, 0. The middle number is how you cause roots and blooms, and so it's 18% phosphorus, and so it helps load up that plant. If you've had things that aren't blooming very well, that little trick will really be a game changer for the quantity and the size of the flowers you'll have next spring.
So when do you start doing that?
If you've had trouble, I would do it right now. The most important probably, because the ones that seem to be challenged, where I hear the most, they haven't bloomed in a while, are the spring bloomers. So it's not so much forsythia, it'd be the quince and the lilacs, it's a big one, roses, just haven't bloomed. I load people up with this and it just makes a difference. They think I'm really a genius. Really just knowing how to do things and when makes a difference. So you had a question up here, right?
Oh, yeah. The plant food, is that also good for indoor plants?
It could be indoor plants, yes. So it could be indoor plants. Now it's got an organic smell. If you're used to chemicals, like the turf builders all your life, you stick your hand in the bag to spread it by hand, it burns your skin off, that kind of stuff, that doesn't have a smell. This has got cottonseed meal and bird guano and fairy dust. It's got all kinds of stuff in there, makes things bloom. It can have the living room. I wouldn't do it right before I had guests over. That's what I'm trying to say, yeah.
With any of these fertilizers, when you throw them out, do you water them in then?
I don't water them in. I don't do anything. I just throw them out there and I expect them to go through the rock and the shredded bark and it'll go through the fabric. It won't go through plastic. It'll go through the fabrics, the wheat fabrics, very, very easily. And I expect nature to do this for me. I don't think in terms of drip emitters. Drip emitters, if you just think you got 2 emitters, you get this huge tree. You can't put all the food right there. I think in terms of drip lines, where are the roots going to be? I'm going to try to put the fertilizer out there. The other one I can say, a lot of my California folks, they love the spikes, the tree spikes. They make this nail that's made of fertilizer, you nail it in. First of all, you can't nail that into our ground. It breaks up as you have to do a pre-hole to get the hole in, to get the fertilizer in. And then, it does fertilize for a year. It does do what it say, but it only does it right here. The problem is, where are the growing roots? Where do you put the spike? So you can't get enough of them. And so I used to sell thousands of these spikes. I had fruit tree spikes and evergreen spikes and rose spikes. And again, I found folks used them incorrectly. They just really didn't work with our environment very well. Our alkaline water is kind of a problem. And so they just didn't break down as quickly. And so folks were struggling with it. So I stopped selling that. Going, okay, organics are better. They kind of do the same thing. They fertilize. They just break up the fertilizer so you can get consistency. underneath the drip line. It's just better. Go with this. So yeah,
Ken, rule of thumb on the pots,
yeah.
when you're putting your all-purpose plant food on it, how much would you use? A quarter of a
Gotcha.
pound?
For containers, and so I've got over 50 outdoor containers. We have a lot of houseplants too. Really, when you get done, it looks like salt and pepper. If you think in those terms, dinner plate, salt and pepper, it looks like that. Good thing about our all-purpose food, if we're talking about that specific one, it's a slow release. So it's got much more fudge factor. You can make a mistake without burning up the plant. Whereas as some of these synthetics, they're so hot and they release so fast that you can really be too much. You can give it too much. It's harder to do that with all-purpose plant food. I would say if in doubt in a container, if in doubt, leave it out. Sprinkle a little bit on. You can always put a little bit more on. But if you're not quite sure, is it too much, is more better? I did actually put one of my rookie horticulturalists in training, feeding my tree racks with the all-purpose food. And go, here's how much. Dunk, 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 dunk. And gardeners are generous. I mean, every time they'll put 40 cents in and supersize it. They just love more is better, bigger is better, more is better. So if you know that gardeners are generous, I trained them and they went too heavy. And all my trees started to defoliate, getting burned leaves. I went, oh my gosh, you just destroyed like $10,000 worth of trees. Now we recovered in a couple weeks, it came back. But I learned that you can get too much. So if in doubt, just go a little lighter. We can always come back in a couple weeks and do the tree racks again. And I've never had that mistake again. So it's just training folks. Yeah.
What about on grass?
Lawns, like a mowing lawn.
Right.
The best fertilizer ever for lawns. There I would do a little more often. I probably do it, I don't want to go down that path too much. I could do a whole lesson on just lawns. What I do with my lawn, now I don't have grass lawns anymore. When the kids left for college, I ripped it out and I put a beautiful patio in, basically. I mean, glorious like patio with thyme lawns, which are easier care. What I do is I'll take soil activator. Once a month, I put something on my lawn. I put this on. And I put this on. Yeah, can I do this without breaking my back? In March, I start this, and then I flip them once a month. I do this through October. Once a month, I put something on there. This actually fertilizes it. You'll have the greenest lawn you've ever seen. Thick as can be. Weeds will not dare compete with your lawn because of this. I hate thatching and aerating. You have to do that with a lawn or it just doesn't look good. That's like work. And so this actually eats up soil activator. This actually takes all that dead thatch, the dead under matting. It feeds the bacteria that feeds on the thatch. So I never have to thatch with this. And I don't have to aerate because it promotes deeper roots. Also, if you've had any plants that are stressed, your maples, your aspens, your sycamores just didn't quite color up like they should, like your neighbors did. That's a stressed plant. They didn't bloom like you wanted. Give it this will force it to form more roots. So anyway, that's what I do for
And you can do that now too?
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Again, this is just experience. I mean, this is just things I've learned over the decades gardening here, just some tricks that have really worked. Okay. One more question, then we'll go back on track. Two more questions.
Real quick. Can you use the superphosphate on hydrangeas?
Hydrangeas, yes.
Okay.
Anything, superphosphate is anything that blooms or fruits.
Okay, thank you.
So that's what it's really going to form. So if it's forming flowers, roses, lilacs, hydrangeas, rhododendrons.
Fruit?
Yep. Fruit trees, yeah.
I thought that you advocated putting the fertilizer on in February. Does it say that on the bag, or I don't know where I got that?
February it could be February. So her question was, for this side of the room, and you folks watching it online, the question is, can you fertilize a little bit earlier than Easter? Because Easter does slide from 1st of April through March, who knows when. It doesn't matter, just get it on. What will happen is if you put it on early, the ground is still cold, and so it won't break down. It'll just sit there until the soil gets to a certain temperature, and then it'll just start going. So the plants will just start activating. So again, there's a lot of fudge factor. It's not about exactly when to place the fertilizer. It's about consistency, just keeping it on more regularly. Once a year just does not do it here. And you'll walk your neighborhoods. Well, you watch your evergreens. Evergreens are the indicators of who the gardeners are and who the gardeners aren't in your neighborhood. As we get into the end of the year through February, the deodar cedars will turn this gold color, this yellow, call it winter chlorosis, yellowing to the pines, yellowing the spruce, yellowing to, they don't have the color. And so those that fertilized, rich green. I mean, long needles. I mean, they just look like rock stars in the winter garden. You can tell, oh, those folks fertilized last fall. Those that didn't, the red tip photinias look wispy and thin and yellow. The new growth isn't red, it's more of a pinky color. You can just tell who fertilized, who's got healthy plants and who doesn't. The last thing you want to do is go to the Yavapai, shelter, look at puppy dogs and want to bring one home. You don't go for the puppy dog that's coughing up fur balls and looking kind of mangy looking. You want the perky, happy, I'm so happy to take me home with you kind of pet. Well, your plants are the same way. You don't want there's some that actually will bring you down. They make you look unhealthy. So you want that. So we're trying to set the stage for that, okay? So these are just kind of the insider tips and things, okay? Now, I've got, Ken, do I have the sign-up sheet? Oh, give me your email address, and I will give you the notes that we're covering today. These are my notes. You'll have this in your inbox by Monday, okay? I gave you the 4-step program on how to fertilize. That's just, I thought it was important enough for plants here, for health, for getting through winter. That really plays out. That's not just this fall, it's any time of, this is how to fertilize for the year. And I guess while I'm also handing things out, do I have enough of these to give out here and there?
I don't know, but if you don't, we know how to fix it.
Well, yeah. At the pumpkin carving, I'm going to give out a hand, because I figured pumpkin people are like vegetable grower folks. So winter vegetables, there's a winter vegetable, there's summer vegetables. All the summer vegetables are pretty much done. They're not going to produce anymore. We're now switching to lettuce, beets, cauliflower, what? Oh, here, there's some for that side. At that pumpkin carving, I'm going to do 20% off all vegetables. Well, I figured it'd be rude not to have the class have the same thing. So if you want veg for today only, if you need some veggies, great, or herbs, veggies and herbs, there are a whole series of, we actually have 3 growing seasons, and we have 3 blooming seasons. We've got a season in March through May, basically, which I call early spring. This is when your pansies, kale, this is when your lettuces and your all the things that are leafy and early, they've got a lot of antifreeze in them. They just don't freeze. I mean, pansies love, the thing that makes them happy, plant them right now and have it snow. They will perk up, pop through the snow, and just be giddy about the whole thing. They love the cold. They do not like the heat. So they poop out in June. There's no amount of water you can give a pansy or viola or kales. They just bolt or things happen. So we've got this planting season in March, April, that gets us through that cold night, bright day. So there's a whole series of flowers that do that, like petunias, geraniums are pretty much like that. Marigolds are like that, pansies, of course, Dusty Miller. And then we go to summer. By middle of June, it's just getting hot. I mean, it's 90 degrees out with a prevailing southwest wind. The rains aren't going to come for another 3-4 weeks. And so it's just hot. Those plants, like zinnias, there's some plants that just love the heat. Lantanas, your cacti, your succulents, they love the heat. So you plant them then. That's when you're planting your tomatoes, your pumpkins. You're planting things that form a fruit in the heat after the last frost. Our last frost is typically Mother's Day. Our first frost is typically Halloween. Traditionally, the 100-year average is October 29th. This year it was early though. Remember we had a frost, what was that, second week in October? Yeah. It was 2 weeks early this year. And then it warmed right back up, and we probably won't see another frost for another couple weeks, middle of November, but the average, that's the funny thing about averages. So then now we're planting our winter things. This is when you start to plant another whole crop of broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, lettuce, things where you're eating the foliage or the flower bud, like broccoli. You plant those now. So we always have broccoli for Christmas dinner, fresh out of the garden. You can do that too if you're planting right. If you were to plant it a month earlier, let's say July or August, it would have bolted on you. It would have gone to flower. It would have tasted bitter. The flavor just isn't there. Lettuce loves the cold. It needs a cold to bring that sweetness out. Otherwise, it gets this off flavor. So, anyway, okay. You're now part of the group. There you go. Don't want to leave anyone out. Where are we at? Watch for, right now, aphids. Aphids start showing up in a big way. They're attracted to your pine trees, the ponderosas. They're a native insect that just roams around, they fly around, but they also like other things. They like apple trees, they like willow trees, they like your roses, they like a whole bunch of different, what'd you say?
Roses.
Oh, roses, yeah, they like your roses. We're finding them all sorts of stuff. So check your pines, start there, and there it looks like a big black spider. It's like an aphid on steroids. It's really big and it's generally black. It kind of takes on the color of the bark. In fact, you look at it, I think that's bark on the tips on the new growth. And you look at it closely, the bark is moving. And that doesn't quite seem right. And so you go, okay, I got aphids. That'll actually cause some dripping or what's called honeydew. Be this glossy look. The rocks underneath the tree will look like it's wet. Or the leaves on the bottom side of your rose or hollies or whatever look like they're wet. That's honeydew or honey or aphid poop, basically, excrement that's coming out. So they pierce the leaves, suck the sap that comes out. Just be aware, aphids like it when it's bright, cold nights, bright days, cold nights. So now through the end of the year is when we have aphids, and then usually February through April is another season for aphids. Just be aware. Aphids are super easy to kill. If you see them, what I do is I power up a hose-in sprayer, something where I get volume, just sheer quantity, and I put in multi-purpose insect spray, and I just hose down that whole part of the garden, that whole part of the tree. The thing is, if they're on pines, aphids are pretty smart. They'll actually move. If you're spraying them over here, they'll actually move to the other side of the tree where you can't get to them. So you got to get them from a couple angles, or you'll have some left. Just some things to watch for. Okay, the other one to watch, if you've got pine trees, hold on. If you've got pine trees, we have a real problem with ips beetle or bark beetle. It's a little tiny thing, about 1/8 inch long, cute as can be. But they burrow underneath the bark and they start eating the cambium layer. Their favorite is ponderosa. I've seen them on Austrians. Generally, I haven't really seen them on pinyon pines as much. They get more scale. They have a scale issues instead of a bark beetle. But if they get stressed enough, they can actually be affected. And then as the holes get bigger, as the plant becomes more and more stressed, you can get flathead borers or some bigger things, predators that come in just to finish things off. So what happens is as a tree gets stressed, it sends off this turpentine smell. It's like a signal going, hey, I'm really stressed out, attack me, everyone on me. And so that there's like the whole forest is coming at this one pine tree and it starts attacking it. So you'll have not just one bark beetle, you'll have thousands. And so keep those plants healthy. If you're in that pine interface, you need to really protect those because they've been growing there for hundreds of years, but now you change the environment to where they're not used to driveways and pathways and gutters taking things around. They aren't used to that environment. You're going to have that gardener's touch on them to keep them healthy. I've just seen too many pines lost. I'm starting to see this upswing of bark beetles again. So we have had it so bad where entire swaths of the forest were just gone. I mean, every ponderosa on the street killed, every one of them. None left. Every pinyon pine, every one of them killed off by scale. So we've seen that. Unless a gardener is taking care of them, then you see this one magical tree still left alive. And here's what they did. They watered them like once a month. Your pine trees, the natives, we're talking natives now. Natives, I would water once a month, mainly from February through May. That's when they really get stressed out. I wouldn't put them on a drip system I wouldn't overdo it. I'd take like a soaker hose and just wrap it around that half-inch, 50-foot soaker hose. I'd just put it out there and run it for half a day. Once a month from February through May. Maybe June. By July, you've got rains and nature can take care of it. But just fill in the gap, and then I would fertilize them in the month of now, fall feeding. And I'd use the all-purpose plant food. The cottonseed meal in that is like magic for evergreens. Really keeps them healthy. And then lastly, I would give them Plant Protector. I'm gonna engulf myself. Here we go. Plant Protector is like an antibiotic for trees. It's systemic. You mix up in a watering can, you go out there, you pour it right at the base of the trunk. It goes through the crown of the tree, not the drip line. It goes right at the base of the tree. I would just put this on there, and this will get absorbed underneath the bark and go up the cambium layer of the tree. So as bark beetles come attack that plant, it will keep them at bay. Kills them basically.
Does that kill scale too?
It kills scale as well. Yeah, it sure does scale. And any of your pine trees and stuff, this is kind of a must if you want to keep them alive. I brought my neighbor's pine trees back to life. We thought she was going to give up, have them change them. I go, whoa, give me just a moment. That's like, I don't want the view behind that. I still want that pine tree there. Let me help you. So I just fertilized it real quick, and I gave it some of this for a couple of years. It's back. I mean, it looks glorious. So it came back. They want to live. But they were being attacked by bark beetle and scale on our pinyon pines. And so this is how I brought them back, okay, for bugs, yeah.
Would you use that as a preventative ahead of time?
I
Just to
would.
make sure?
Yeah, I would. If you've got pine trees, especially some of you bought your lot for these majestic ponderosas. Some of your pinyon pines have so much character. I mean, you built the house around it. I mean, it's that kind. If you lose it, they're worth thousands and not replaceable in your lifetime or your kid's lifetime. And it'll take hundreds of years. And so there, I would really protect those. I would use this as a preventative. Right now. I would use it right now. Yeah, if you've got an infestation, do it now, and I do it in March. I do it twice until I get it under control. But for right now, if you water once a month during the drier parts of the year, if you fertilize in the fall and you give it this, you are not going to have problems. You'll be fine. Make sure your cell phones are off. Who's calling me? Probably spam. Actually, my phone number is everywhere, so I do get a lot of prank bad calls. Yeah. Neem is good. Neem is great. That's called Triple Action on the shelf down there. It's an organic, really great for things. Kills aphids off really well. Doesn't do anything for bark beetle or ips beetle or scale unless you time it exactly right. I mean, like the day that they're crawling. What the Forest Service says for a lot of that stuff is use the permethrin, this stuff, instead of or this. I find this is just easier for folks to use. Doesn't take a lot of hardware. It takes a watering can or a 5-gallon bucket, and you're golden. Okay. Good questions. Okay.
Are you using that for your borders on fruit trees?
I can. It's labeled for fruit trees. It's labeled mainly for pitted fruits. So some fruits, the stems will actually filter out. That, so it doesn't get into your fruit. But it's not rated for every fruit. So let's read the label and see which fruit you're dealing with. It's actually amazing how many you can use it on. We do get a clear-winged wasp that lays her eggs on pitted fruits, mainly peaches, apricots, nectarines, cherries, and she'll start, the larva, it's a worm, will actually burrow in and kill off, girdle the tree at the base. You see these big bubbles of sap coming out. That's where I'd use that, yeah. So there, if you see that, come talk to us, and we can get really specific for that particular bug and that particular tree and help you out. Right now, I'm just trying to do the catch-all, 30,000 foot level. Here's what you should be doing right now. We can get more detail later, okay? 45 minutes, 40 minutes before we carve a pumpkin open, okay? Food. Oh, I didn't bring any up here, but weed and grass preventer, weeds. There's two things I really despise that are just work. Watering is just work. I don't want to water. I never want to pull the hose out and water anything. I want God allowed man to create computers to run irrigation for us, called an irrigation clock. That's what it should do all the work for us. I don't want to ever drag a hose out. Now, some of you you're not gardeners. Some of you are waterers. That's your hobby is watering. You love going out and just spending 2 hours watering things. I never want to do that. So computers can hone that in, and then weeds are my nemesis. I really despise weeding. I never want to take a hoe. I don't like using Roundups. In fact, we don't even sell glyphosates in the store anymore because there's this debate going, it could kill you or it could kill weeds. We're not quite sure which way it can go, but it can kill you. And you're just seeing more and more lawsuits coming up with it can kill you. I'm the guy that's going to get killed. The guy that sells all the stuff. I'm the guy exposed the most. I don't want cancer from selling Roundup for a life. No amount of money is worth that. So we just stopped selling that. We went organic. We've got there's other ways to kill weeds. And so what I do myself, I put weed and grass preventer down when I'm putting my fertilizer down. Weed and grass preventer is a granular. It looks like fertilizer, but you spread it over the rock lawn, you spread it through the rose bed, you spread it through the raised beds, wherever you've got weed problems, I spread weed and grass preventer down. What it does is, as the dandelions are starting to grow right now, you'll see foxtail and dandelion. Those are the two big winter weeds. They come up, and the closer we get to the new year, the colder it gets, the bigger they get, the more of a problem they become. And they look so innocent. Foxtail looks like this beautiful grass. It's so green and luscious. And then the first warm day in March, it turns into this thorn that wants to go through your sock, go through your ankle, and come out the other side. It's got this terrible, dogs eat in their ears. I've had to take cats to the vet with foxtail in their eyes. I mean, just crazy things. But it looks innocent. It only comes back by seed. Only seed. It's not a perennial. If you can keep the seed from germinating, it won't come back for you. Same with goat head, same with horehound, same with tumbleweed. These are all annuals. They only come back by seed. If you can keep the seed from germinating and coming up, it won't be a problem. Or the numbers can be hugely reduced. You spread the weed and grass preventer down. It's all about timing. You want to put it down now, because by the first of the year, all those winter weeds become really a problem. So you got to get it on before the weeds show up, not after. And then I'll put it down again right before the monsoons come. Usually in June, I'll put down weed and grass preventer again to keep that's when tumbleweeds come up, that's when goat head, that real flat, cute looking ground cover thing, and you pull it up, it's got all these burrs that I've had them pop tractor tires before. It's crazy what that seed will do to you. Much less the dogs or kids with bikes, and they'll never survive. And so I want to keep those at bay. So I do it with those 2 times. What I will do is I'll spray, I don't know if I brought any up here. I've got 2. I've got a really crazy strong vinegar with an oil added to it. It's called Burn Out. It's a spray. You spray things that happen to show up. It's completely organic, completely safe for birds and pets and husbands and all that stuff. It's completely safe. I don't know if I put it in my cereal bowl or anything, but I would use some common sense. But it's way safer than Roundup, and it kills off things that show up. In the winter, I prefer myself, this is just me, it's called Weed Beater Ultra. It's not organic, it's a chemical, but man, it kills, even in cold January days, I can put this in a tank sprayer and knock out dandelions, they grow extra big, extra fast. In the winter, it seems like. And so I use this in my tank with some spreader sticker, and it knocks them right out. So this works in colder climate, when it's colder out, this works better. So if you get into weeds, you got weed problems, come talk to me. I can help you.
Will that kill wildflowers, like we planted wildflowers?
Yes,
seeds?
it will.
It will kill them.
Yes. It won't kill wild grasses, but it will kill wild flowers. So be careful where you spray them. Sometimes wildflowers look kind of like weeds at first, so they don't look, when they're blown, they're great, but when they kind of look,
You got to kill Bermuda.
Bermuda, that one's a hard one. Hard work and sweat is what kills Bermuda.
Yeah,
It's hard.
For that.
Yeah. That one you almost dig up the bed and start over again, pull up the roots and trying to get it all out. I don't have anything that will kill. I can kill Bermuda, like the burnout will kill Bermuda, but then it keeps coming back and keeps creeping in. Bermuda is kind of like a weed, a noxious weed. So same with morning glory. The wild morning glory or bindweed, one that grows wild, has a pretty little flower, just crawls up stuff and then sheds seed everywhere and comes back. That one comes back by seed, only by seed.
It's red,
It can be red to pink to, yeah, it's more that color.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
all over my scribble.
You got to use the weed and grass preventer and keep them from coming back by seed. They always come back by seed. Shall I go over a couple plants before we run out of time? So we got 20 minutes before really I got to start heading that way. So I'll just go over some of the winter things that I like. Some things you'll see the transition of plants from spring plants. Like I don't think I have any spring things right now. No rhododendrons, no azaleas, no. It's all fall color and winter evergreens. So you'll see this ebb and flow at the garden center, mainly because our garden center, we're a inspiration garden center. We're kind of like the wow place. So we want plants that are like, wow, oh my gosh, I can't believe they look this good. So you'll see this things look good. And a couple lessons as we go through. What I thought I would start with are the evergreen shrubs. A lot of you are familiar with this one. Very, very common. Your grandparents grew this one. Anyone know what it is? Heavenly bamboo, exactly. Or nandina. This is domestica. This is the tall one. So you can use this to soften up. Like all the new homes, I love that brick cinder block look. It drives me crazy. I feel like I'm in a prison or something. So I always want to soften this up to kind of break it up some. For me, I don't have cinder block. I've got cedar. It's a little bit soft, but still, when you fence me in, I want it to feel like a secret garden, not like a fence. And so I'll use these to soften up the edges because it'll get up to about 6 foot height. I use these in containers. But the lesson here is not this one. What you'll get, we've got some new varieties coming out. This is Sienna Sunrise. It's related to this. It's a cousin, but it stays denser. And the real secret is this evergreen, the more sun it's exposed to, this color, this bronzy color, turns almost like a flame red, like a beautiful red color. If it's in the shade more, it'll stay green. But that same leaf will turn red, then turn green, turn red, then turn green. It has just white flowers that come up and red berries. There's even some dwarf varieties. Harbor Dwarf will sell. It only gets up about 1 foot tall and then spreads out. So this is a great one for here because our zone is perfect for it, for the transition. Then animals, especially in that wildland interface, javelina don't bother it, deer don't eat it. I mean, it looks delicious. I mean, I even want to add a little ranch dressing and go, yum. But animals just don't bother it. It's got kind of a sap. It's got a white sap. You break off the limbs, but easy to maintain. It depends on the variety. That one only gets about chest high. This one, you folks from the East Coast know what this is. This is yew, Y-E-W. It's an evergreen. Puts red berries on, little tiny insignificant flower, but the berries are kind of red. The lesson I want to bring with this, my front yard is very high fashion, high color. It's where all my work is. I've got lots of flowers. I love going out and deadheading flowers, sipping coffee. That's my thing. So that's where all the work is. It's small though. The backyard, which is the biggest area, is very low maintenance, native. I never want to go back there and have to work or slave. So I use a lot of native low water stuff. That is where we grill, entertain, hot tubs, fire pits. It's where a lot of people hang out, those in the backyard. So I use this one. I have a 2-story stucco part of the house. It's a classic dugout house, 2-story, overlooking vista, overlooking Granite Dells. It's pretty. It was shaded though. I couldn't grow natives up there. And so I'm going, what can I do? I got to do something with this wall. So I took this beautiful piece of art. It's a face about this big. Looks gorgeous. I elevated it up on the wall, painted it red. I mean, it just glows, goes, whoa, that's pretty cool. Then I needed something to frame it because just a big head on a 2-story stucco wall, that's not so good. So I took 2 of these Hicks yews on either side. They're now over 1 story tall. They're about 1.5 stories tall. Big green pillars. So they really softened up the wall and made it feel like a garden, not like a wall. And I put it on my drip system that runs the native section, which is I water about every 10 to 14 days. This is not a native. I thought it was kind of a half experiment, half will it grow there? It has done fabulous. What I found is I can intermix some ornamentals in my native gardens because this is shaded. It just doesn't dry out as fast as things out in the full sun. So it's done really magnificent because I didn't want to put a separate drip system in the backyard. I just want natives. This is what you get. Deal with it or die. Figure it out. But use is a great little evergreen for you. This is the color it looks in the spring. This color it looks like in the winter. This is the color it looks like in the summer. This is what you get all the time. Use. Oh, let's see. Another one, a companion plant we use are hollies. Oops. Ripped it right out of there. I wonder what I do.
Speak up.
Oh, here. Are we back online? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I guess so. I got to figure out the wireless solution. Hollies. Again, the Midwest, East Coast folks love hollies. Hollies actually adapt very well here in the shade. Other parts of the country, they grow in full sun. Not so much here. I would say another one like that is Japanese maples. They grow in California in full sun, the Midwest, full sun. Not here. The tag says full sun. Not here. Here our sun is more intense. This plant will take a surprising amount of sun, but I find it does best in the east exposure to direct west exposure. But it's just classic evergreen. We probably have 4 or 5 varieties. The reason it does so well, it has this really waxy leaf. And so it just doesn't dehydrate as fast. It's got natural built-in defenses. The secret is just got to plant it in a more strategic place, more shaded areas than more sun areas. Okay, there's that red berry. I mean, you just want to bring it in for the holidays and make a Christmas dinner table display or something. Yeah.
Do the deer in javelina like that?
No, they seem to leave them alone. Yeah, she should be okay. Same with the yew. It's actually poisonous. So if you want to kill yourself, make a UT or something. Or if you got puppies, probably don't get this one. There's some things. I'm putting together an article right now on plants to stay away from if you've got puppies. It's not quite in the can yet. It's still in my thinking phase, but I'm going to write an article on that one. This one is rosewood. Doesn't look like much, but if you're into native stuff, this one is hardcore native. You see this growing wild in Skull Valley, from Baghdad all the way up to the backside of Copper Basin. You've seen this one grow wild. It's a bush about like this big, thick evergreen. But once this gets up to size, I would cut it off of all care and all water, all fertilizer. I would just never do anything with it again. Right now, when they're young, they look a little rougher than, let's say, the Nandina or hollies. But if you're into natives, this is a great one. Rosewoods are a good evergreen native tree for here. This is in my backyard. And again, once I get it rooted up to size, I just cut off the irrigation and never think about it again. I might give it a haircut to keep it shaped a little bit, but it's just no care. Okay?
Any flowers on that?
No real flowers, yeah, it's got a little flower, but really it's a big evergreen bush, that's it. This one we already spoke about. This is Elaeagnus or silverberry. I think this is a far better choice than red tip photinia. Gets up about head high, about this big and wide, thick as can be. You cannot, and once it gets up to something, you can't kill it unless you overwater it. That's how you're going to kill this one. So neglect it, treat it with less care, go on that RV trip across country for a month, come back, the irrigation failed day 2 of you leaving, this is still alive, everything else in the landscape is dead. This is like cactus or manzanita or some of those things. What we found though is it looks kind of native-y. It's got that green silver leaf thing. Yeah, some people don't like it, so we figured out how to do this with it. All of a sudden we're selling, we can't keep these in stock. This is the exact same plant with a variegation. It's got the gold color to it. Again, it gets up about this high. You can use it as a screen. Again, evergreen. I use a lot of these. This is Elaeagnus or silverberry. Just think Ellie and Agnes, 2 old school names, and then put them together. That's the Latin name, or silverberry is a common name. This is another native. This is gray leaf cotoneaster or cotton easter is how you spell it. Gets up about like this tall. Kind of a nice gray. If you like that Arizona, it's got an Arizona look to it. If you like that, this is great. If you got a lot of light colored rock in your lawn, this would be a great contrast plant for that. So if you got a lot of manzanitas, lots of green, and you want that contrasting blue silver color, this is a great one. Again, get up to size, and once it's up to size, no more care, no maintenance, it just goes by itself. Okay, good Arizona plant for here. The ones your grandparents grew were this one. You know what that is? Pyracantha or firethorn. See how it does have a little thorn on it. This one happens to be a bush form. It also comes in Victoria, the tall variety, but it forms these berries. I think this is a plant I'm trying to reintroduce, bring it back to life because it's so hardy here. I put this into commercial settings quite often. I mean, commercial schools, graveyards, I mean, they kill everything. I mean, just everything is just death and decay. This one seems to last. So I'm trying to go, this one's hardy enough for us to, this is a I like to travel, I like freedom kind of town. So this is one you can plant, get going. It still looks great. Gets the berries every year. This is one the birds in the winter, when the berries are fermented, will start eating the berries and just become, they're stumbling around on the fence because they're just drunk. This is another great winter plant. Every yard needs one of these. This is Oregon grape or Mahonia. Oregon grape. This has got a holly leaf, but this will take blistering hot sun. Surrounded by asphalt, it will still do great. Loves the heat. We've got 3 models. One that gets this high, hip high, and ankle high. So you got to pick the variety, what height I want for my gardens. But the reason I brought this is, again, this is kind of like Nandina. The more sun it's in, the brighter the reds. It'll actually turn a different color. Very pretty. If it's in more shade, which is where you see it growing wild, up in the Bradshaws, those areas, it just stays green. But in the sun, it just adapts really well. It does great. In the spring, it has this cluster of yellow flowers that blooms. Give us a tag on that. Sometimes I'll put that note. And then it forms a little blueberry, thus the name Oregon grape. Sometimes I'll make grape jelly out of it. You'll never get to do that. First of all, the harvest is really small, and then the birds just think they've died and gone to heaven when the berries form. So they love the berries on this one. And then, of course, we're trying to introduce more manzanitas, more varieties of manzanita. They're just hard to grow. Oh man, the loss rate is like 50%. If you put a crop in, you're going to throw away half of them. So it's hard to, and it's a long crop. It takes forever. And so we're struggling to get them to propagate and do well and then transplant. You can't just take a cutting and stick it. You can't just take a pup from underneath a bigger plant, just plant it. They die every time. They're kind of sensitive. I've tried to grow this manzanita. It's a tall manzanita. Gets up like this big. Has a little bit bigger leaf than our native one that grows here, but it's equally as hardy. Red stems. Here's the lesson on this. I am not able to grow this in my yard. I've tried 5 times. And I'm a gardener, hardcore. I've got heavy clay soil and I'm on a north slope. With that north slope always shaded, snow loads up, it doesn't drain. I can't get enough perk. I can't get the soil to drain fast enough for this plant. And so I've abandoned the idea of manzanita. I may try to get in a pot or something, I don't know. 5 times, it gets discouraging though. So what I've done is I've switched to junipers. It's sacrilege to some of you, but we're in juniper forest. Junipers love growing here. And I'm taking some of the brighter colors, some of the golds, some of the bright silver colors, and I'm using those, and they thrive in that area. So manzanitas work well. We'll have probably 3-4 varieties of manzanita that we'll have cycle through. I think we're securing some sources. Some farmers are actually some nerds, plant nerds. They've grown everything and they're tired of growing stuff, but they still have a backyard farm that they kind of use, and they're into manzanitas. I think, in fact, Lisa is talking to one right now in the office. I think we got a source for several different varieties. They're hardy for here. Yes?
How much water did they take?
Oh, I mean, virtually none. I mean, if you're going to kill it, treat it like a cactus. You're not going to kill it. You're just going to get overwatered. And I could not water mine less. I couldn't water mine any less. I wasn't watering it at all. Still died in clay soil. I wouldn't put it in clay soil. I wouldn't put it in the rocks where it just doesn't perk. I'd put it where someplace I got some more loamy areas. Okay.
But in your fire thing, you said they were highly flammable.
Oh yeah, these things will, I mean, if you look at it wrong, it will go up in flames. If you're in the wildland interface where you got a fire hazard, don't plant this near your house. One spark will make it go up. So it's not fire-wise, but it is native. So this is not a fire-wise class. This is a native. This is a what do I like in the winter garden. There's a place you can put that, an island out there. This one is agave or century plant. It's on all the front of the magazines right now. Any kind of design magazines, I love agaves. This one's hardy for here. So you folks from Southern Cal, Palm Springs, Tucson, Phoenix area, you're used to those more tropical varieties. There's not all agaves will grow here. This one is very hardy. Grows up on the top of all the mountain ridges. Artichoke agave is another name it goes by. Century plant, this is the one that grows that flower that gets really tall. You can almost watch it grow by day. It grows once every century, or blooms once every century. This is the plant they're talking about. Okay? It actually blooms about once every 20, 25 years. It's not once every century. It's more often, but it may or may not bloom while you're in your house. Okay, so I've got one of these. I planted like this big, maybe 7, 8 years ago. It's now this big around, about this tall. It's magnificent. I now worry about skewering guests or mainly grandkids. You know, they kind of flop around, face plant into my agave, and kind of stay away from that part of the garden, boys. Grasses. What's the exact name variety of this? This is pink muley grass. Isn't that pretty? It's gorgeous. I wish I could lift it up and show you folks in the back, but these are I'm actually going to sell my mannequins. We grow like one specimen of certain things. So I'm going to go down the line, show you what they are for like $100. This is like a $200 plant. If you want this, I only have one. I've got small ones too for like $15. But if you want that, grab it now. It won't be here later for like $100. This is the time of year you want to plant grasses, and here's why. In the spring, I've got lots of grasses, but they're all cut back. They look awkward. They don't look like, summer through fall is when grasses look their best. And so the lesson now's when you want to plant your red sedge. This is actually a red grass. It grows like this. This goes in certain container gardens. This is fabulous. So I've got a Tiki Man head. It's like this tall. It's a piece of art. I'm an artist. I like the artsy parts of things. So it's got this big planter head. It looks like Easter Island head is that. And I use this in the top because it gives him hair. It just looks funky. People walk in there going, what is he thinking? Yeah, I know. That's what art is supposed to do, make you think. So you can have fun with these. But this, in the spring, it doesn't look like that much. It looks like brown dead grass. In the fall, it looks like red, glorious, gorgeous stuff. Same with this. I actually add into my native gardens. Just I need something soft. Grasses actually catch the wind. They add life and motion to the gardens. They just have a lot of dimension to things. So I don't think we use grasses enough, mainly because we do most of our planting in the spring when grasses don't look so good. So we don't sell very many grasses. We sell them all now. This is when you want to buy grasses and plant them. Yes, they'll turn brown. They'll die back to the ground like a perennial will. So you'll cut them back, usually with a lawnmower, weed whacker or something. I use my hedgerow a lot, just wink, done. But this is when you want to plant these. This is Japanese. This is Overdam variegated feather grass. It just has it's a green grass with a stripe going up, and it's variegated striped this way. I've also got a striped grass that's striped this way. It's variegated going this way. Really cool. So this is when you see things. Of course, the most famous grass of all, pampas grass. That's the tall one. Personally, that one is a dwarf variety of pampas grass. It only gets up about head high. The regular pampas grass can go to the rafters or bigger. I mean, it's huge. I personally never plant one in my own yard because I don't want that much work. I've got some planted out in the front landscape because cars go by and they just go, I got to have one of those. So to sell, it's just a mannequin. It's just to sell more pampas grass. It's just a lot of work for me. I don't want to, it's got to be cut back to the ground, close to the ground every year. It's more work. If you want one, I've got some stunning varieties, and they're dwarf varieties. But now's the time to plant grasses. That's the lesson right now. I've got a lesson here. This is burning bush. It grows really, really well locally. For you Midwest folks, this is a very famous plant in the Midwest. This is like every yard's got hedgerows of this. It grows up about this tall, about this wide, and every year you can count on this bright red color. Another week, this will be just solid red. I find a better variety, not better, a native variety, the one I use myself. It's just getting done. This is sumac. Now, most of my sumacs are done, from staghorn sumacs to tiger-eyed sumacs. This is a low-grow sumac or fragrant sumac. It's got a very sweet flower in the spring to it. It's got the same kind of color. This one gets about this tall, spreads like this. And once it gets up to size, once it's rooted, you never have to care for it again. It's a complete native. And it has this orange color. This is when it's really famous. It's fragrance, spring flower, and then it's fall color.
Deciduous.
Deciduous, yeah. Most of your fall things are deciduous, or they'll lose their leaves. Perennials, the lesson. This is a good time to plant your summer, fall perennials, and here's what I'm doing with mine. I'm letting my coreopsis, I'm letting my echinaceas, I'm letting them go to seed right now. 2 reasons. One, they'll repopulate. These are wildflowers, basically. So they'll seed spread out, and kind of spread for me. I never know quite where they're going to show up. And then secondly, I'm a bird gardener, so the birds love to eat the seeds. So I'll leave them up there just for the birds. So coreopsis, echinaceas, gaillardias, there's a whole series of them that I do that with. This is my favorite perennial I'm playing with this year. This is heuchera. So all the garden magazines say heuchera, or your parents called it coral bells, is the common name for it. You're planting it for the foliage, but it does have a little flower that kind of has a coral bell flower to it. Comes in lots of different foliage colors, and it holds its foliage through most of the winter. It's an amazing little perennial. I really won't cut it back to the ground. I'll kind of clean it up, fertilize it in February, and it just comes right back. Grows in sun, grows in shade, very, very versatile plant. We've already done vegetables. This is lily of the valley, great evergreen. These are all flower heads that will bloom generally in February, March, April. Super fragrant. Again, this is my mannequin. We sell lots of these in 2 gallons and 1 gallons. We only have like 2 of these. We've had them all season just to kind of inspire folks. Oh yeah, it turns into this. If you want that, it's $100. You could take it home. More of a shade plant. Doesn't like this much sun, although I'm surprised how much sun it will take. Oh no, I broke it. Again, my blueberry mannequin. Blueberries do surprising, and it's got some blueberries on it. They're kind of withering some. There's nothing better. If you get a chance, pick one of the blueberries and taste it. Directly off of the bush. Blueberries are amazing. Fresh out of Costco, I gag. They're sweeter when they're on the bush that last week or so. They're just so sweet. Mannequin brake light yucca. Red yuccas grow up about this tall and kind of get red flowers, kind of a salmon color. This one is a pure brake light red color, and it's shorter, it's dwarf. This is probably half the size of a regular standard red yucca, okay? Man, oh man, okay. And then we got to get it done. Okay, so this is one of my favorite fall and winter annuals, and here's why. This is calendula. Here's a lesson. A bloom like this, it's amazing how much cold this will take. This one does need to be deadheaded, so as you see these flowers, just deadhead those off, and you will see more flowers coming back up right afterwards. amazing plant that most folks don't know about because it's mainly in stock here at the Garden Center during the off season. You don't see it during the peak spring. You see this really early, February, March, or you see it really late, October, November, when you see calendulas. It comes in yellow and orange. And with that, and animals, I find, don't eat this. So my javelina have left this one alone. I don't know why. It looks delicious, but they've left it alone.
But that's a perennial as well.
It's we call it biannual, kind of like snapdragons or they'll last 2-3 years and finally they just poop out. I think they get tired of blooming. Just go, I'm done. They kind of give up. I keep going down with vines and that kind of stuff. After the pumpkin thing, it'll be down the lower greenhouse. Join us if you want. We'll cut things open, see what it looks like, and then we can answer questions afterwards. So I'm probably going direct from here to there. Thank you all. Oh yeah, thank you. That's perfect.